Kakadosh Boker Tov, Masechet Yevamot Daf Amud Aleph 64a1 says the Mishnah, Nasa isha v'shaha ima 10 shanim velo yaleda. A person comes and he gets married, and he's with her for 10 years without having children. Eno rashai levatel. So he's not allowed to be mevatel l'misa pidya v'rivya. So either he has to get divorced or he has to get another pair of shoes. No, another wife. Right? Makes sense. Yeah? Chayav. 10 shanim hu chayav. Eno rashai levatel. Right? That's it. Well, that's what it says. Eno rashai levatel. If he's not allowed to be mevatel a mitzvah, so therefore he either has to get divorced or he has to take another wife. Or. Girsha. Yeah, 100%. Gemara. Again, remember that this is the Mishnah before the Benu Gershom Gola, which means, or before all our takanot, which means that a person can get married for 20 to 25 wives as well. Nothing stops him. So therefore, he either has to get divorced or he's going to take another wife. What happens is Girsha. What happens if he divorces her? She's allowed to get married to somebody else, right? Even though that person is also chayav in pidya verivya. Why? Because we don't know if Be'emet, it was maybe also because of the first husband. We don't know who's the fault. Meaning it could be that there's a difference. Maybe she's going to get married and she's going to have children. She starts again the 10 years. I mean, she gets married to the second husband. Now again, you start the count of 10 years. So now I pass 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. So when it gets, then you get, that means basically you start the count again. Okay? If right now he pila, right? So therefore, by the time she has a miscarriage. So you're going to start the count from the miscarriage. Why? He says over here, because this is basically a case where she actually did give birth, but they didn't stay alive. Okay, not just some. Which one? I didn't understand. So says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, we learned to the Braita, Nasa isha v'sha'ima 10 shanim v'lo yaleda, yotzi v'yiten ketubah. So it says here, a person is married for 10 years. She didn't have children, so he has to divorce her, but he has to give her the ketubah. Why? Shema lo zacha libanot mimena, because maybe he was not zocheh to build a family from her. Okay? So basically, it's a whole thing over here. Exactly what does it mean, mimena? So because of that, so he still has to pay her the money. Even though there's no raya, there's a remembrance. What's the remembrance? It says, why does it say? After 10 years that they were not there, right? It says over there of 10 years in Eretz Canaan. The living in the diaspora does not count as part of the 10 years. And therefore, chalahu. Let's say he became sick or she became sick. Or both of them are in this jail. And it does not count as part of the minyan, which means that the 10 years that we're talking about is not only just because of the meaning basically anything which will cause the minyat erayon, whether it's going to be that he's sick, so therefore he cannot do anything, or she's sick, or they're captured, or whatever the case is. So therefore, right? Basically, that's it. Okay. Elmaleh Rav Nachman. Okay, the Rambam here in the Pirush Mishnayot, it says it's mashma that the count of 10 years is only in a case where they couldn't have tashnish, basically. But okay, there's a whole question here. What's going on? Yeah.
The same thing today for
Elmaleh Rav Nachman says Rav to Rav Nachman. Why don't we learn it from Yitzchak? Yitzchak was 20 years. 1 second, there was 20 years. Why are you learning from Abraham Avinu for 10 years? Why don't you learn from Yitzchak for 20 years? Meaning this entire halacha, you could learn it, right? So says the Gemara, Elmaleh Yitzchak akur haya. Says the Gemara, Yitzchak was the problem, not Rivka. Yitzchak was a kur. And therefore, the problem of the children was not because of her; it was because of him. So says the Gemara, if so, Avraham nami akuraya. Avraham was also an akur. Yeah, Avraham was an akur. So says the Gemara, What? He says, no, this is what he needs for Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Dama Rabbi Chia bar Abba says Rabbi Chia bar Abba name Rabbi Yochanan. Lama nimnu shnotav shel Yishmael. Why is it written the years of Yishmael? Because it says that Yishmael was going to be 137 years old. Why do we need in order to know the account of Yaakov Avinu? What does that mean? Because now that you know that Ishmael was 137, now you could figure out how old was Yitzchak and also Yaakov. You could do all the accounts according to Ishmael. Here it says, because it says that the Gemara explains that he was 14 years in Yeshiva Shem Be'evet. How do you do that explanation? He says, because during that time, right, of Yishmael, of knowing 137, then you could find out everything else, because you already know that he was 14 years older than Yitzchak, and then you continue going, okay? So Amar of Yitzchak, says of Yitzchak Avinu Akuraya, Yitzchak Avinu was Akur. Shneimar vayetar Yitzchak Hashem lenochach ishto, ki akara hi. What does it mean al ishto? It doesn't say al ishto lo neemar, ela lenochach ishto. It doesn't say on his wife, and he was praying on his wife because he was Akar. He was because she was Akara. He was also Akar. So both of them were Akurim, right? So therefore they both had to pray, right, on their Akurutam. So says the Gemara, right? So he comes and he says, Yachiv so vaye'ater lo ve'ater lahem mibayle. If they were both Akarot, meaning Akar and Akara, so therefore it says that Hashem had to answer them, both of them, only just one of them, because even if he cures one, the other one is still going to be Akar or Akara. So says the Gemara, he comes and he says, right? He says, so he says, no, if he sheno domet tfilat tzadik ben tzadik, let tfilat tzadik ben rasha. He says, there's no difference. You cannot compare the power of a tzadik ben tzadik to a tzadik ben rasha. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, says Rabbi Yitzchak, mipnei mayu avotenu akurim. So he says, what is the reason why avotenu ayu akurim? Says the Gemara, yeah, mipnei she'akadosh baruch hu mitavel tfilatan shel tzadikim. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu always wants a tefillah of the tzaddikim. So because of that, he made them akurim. Okay? So he comes and he says, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, says Rabbi Yitzchak, Lama nimshala tefillatan shel tzaddikim ke'eter. Why is the tefillah of the tzaddikim compared to an eter? What is an eter exactly? I don't know, you said in English. A pitchfork. Okay, that's what it is. Yeah, kalshon. So he comes and he says, Ma eter ze me'apecha tevuah. It's coming and it's turning over. It's flipping over the tevuah, the grains. So too tefillah shel tzadikim mitapechet midotav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu midat hakazanun midat rachmanu, which means it changes over the midat of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from being angry to being calm, to being merciful. Okay, so Amar Rabbi Yami, says Rabbi Yami, Avraham v'Sarah tumtumim ayu. Says Avraham and Sarah were tumtumim. What is tumtumim? It was covered over. And that means we don't know whether they're males or females. Shneimar b'zez al-pasuk habitu el atzur, right? 64b. Chutzavtem ואל בור נוקרתם. וכתיב, ונצרתם הביטו אל אברהם אביהם ואל שרה תחוללכם. What does it mean? The pasuk Hashini is talking about now, Avraham nimshal letzur chotzev and Sarah to a bor menukav, which means that it was covered over. So Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rav Hua, says Nachman named Rav Hua, Sarah imenu ailonit haita. Says Sarah imenu was an ailonit. Shneimar says the pasuk, ותהי שרה יקרה אין לה Valad. What does it mean? Afilu bet of vlad. Yeah, afilu bet of vlad in la. What does it mean? Afilu bet of vlad in la. Yeah.
אני שאלתי שאלה אחרת.
אין דבר כזה. אמר רב יהודה ברד רב שמואל בר שילת משמי דרב. Says Rav Yehuda, the son of Shmuel bar Shilat, in the name of Rav, lo shanu ela badorot harishonim. What are we talking about? Dorot harishonim. Ma zot omenet dorot harishonim? Sheshnotehem merubot. What does it mean shnotehem merubot? They had a long life. Aval bedorot ha'acharonim, but in dorot ha'acharonim, sheshnotehem meutot, that they have a very shte shanim umechza. Right? You have only 2.5 years. Why? Keneged shlosha yiburim, which is basically going to be 3 different pregnancies. Okay, and like an extra 6 months, basically. Okay, so that means basically if she still didn't become pregnant after 2.5 years, yes, meaning like this, in the olden days, if they would live for 100 and something years, so then you could say, you know what, 10 years, okay, and now you decide whether to continue married or not to continue married. But he says nowadays, people don't live for 100 years. So if you're going to give them 10 years, well, what are you going to give them now? There's nothing going to be left. So what do you? No. 2.5 years. Rabbi Amar Nachman, shalosh shanim. You have to do 3 years. Why 3 years? Keneged shalosh pekidot. Because if you remember, by the Moed of Rosh Hashanah, it's written HaKadosh Baruch Hu was zocher HaKadosh Baruch Hu ta'akarot. And there, it's to do with shalosh pekidot. Amar Mor, Rosh nifgedu Sarah, Rachel, and Chana. Since it's going to be Sarah, Rachel, and Chana, 3 pekidot, 3 years, 1 year for each one. Now, it's not a full year for pregnancy, but just 1 year for each pekidah. So Amar Rabba comes and he says, Letzniu lani klali, these klalim are not mekubalim la'alacha. Right? Even nowadays, he says, it's 10 years. Michti matzniti mantakin. Who was the one that instituted the Mishnah? It's Rabbi. Rabbi Medev David Imatushne. Already during the lifetime of David Elmaleh, people already stopped living that long. So dichtivi meshenutun vayim shivim shana. So it means if David Elmaleh is already telling you that the lifespan could be 70 years, and if big vurot is going to be shmonim shana, that means you already see that it's not anymore 100, 120, 150, 100. It doesn't exist anymore. So if that doesn't exist anymore, and Rabbi, which comes way after David Elmaleh, is the one that's instituting the Mishnah, he didn't change the time span. So for the halacha is not like that. So says the Gemara, "V'hai shema lo zachali banot emena, v'dilma ihid lo zachia." Says the Gemara, okay, fine, you're right. So therefore the halacha is not anymore the 2.5 years, it's not the 3 years, it's the 10 years, just like what it says in the Mishnah, because even during the time of the Mishnah, it was also when it was minimized the lifetime. Says the Gemara, what did it mean in the Mishnah when it said that he has to give the ketubah in the Gemara? But it says he has to give shema lo zachali banot mimena. Maybe he wasn't zocher to build from her. Maybe she wasn't zocher. So says the Gemara, no. She will never be punished for Pidya Rivya. She's not obligated in Pidya Rivya. She's not obligated in Pidya Rivya. She doesn't get punished. He does get punished, right? Because he's mufkar al Pidya Rivya. So there's a big difference. So says the Gemara, any is it so? Just 1 second. Rabbanan told Rabbi Avi Bazavta, go get married and then have children. Kamalu, and he said, if I was zocher, I would have had children from the first wife. So therefore he comes and he says, there's no difference, there's no reason to think that he's going to build in the second one more than in the first one. So it says, no. There he was pushing off the rabbis, right? Why? You remember we already learned this already, that Rav Huna used to give very long shiurim. When he used to give long shiurim, it was a chutzpah. They wouldn't even go to the washroom. You're going to leave the middle of the shiur. It doesn't exist. Not even to go to the washroom. Now, when you hold yourself in for such a long time, what happens? They become anakar. They become sterile. So because of that, he comes and he says, Rabbi Abba Barzato was pushing him off because he knew he was sterile. Why was he sterile? Because of the shiur of Rav Huna, right? So that's why. So he says he knew. Rav Gidal also became miyakar from Pikar Rav Huna. Rabbi Yechel became Pikar Rav Huna. Sheshat Yakar. Look how many people became sterile, right? Because of Rav Huna. Okay? So here it says that behemet it's asur, right, to stop yourself, right, because of al tishaketzu. So then the question is, so then how was it then that it was permitted? Here the Marshal actually explains that it wasn't that the Chavana they stopped from going to the washroom. They were so deep in their learning that they didn't even realize they had to go. Therefore, they could have been hours without even realizing they had to go to the washroom. And that's why they became sterile. That's what the Maharshal says in the footnote here. So look at all these rabbis that they became that. So then the Gemara says, Ravacha bar Yaakov achate sochinteh. What does that mean? He got a choli, which comes because of stopping of going to the washroom. And therefore, at the end, it causes also to become sterile. Talyua be'arza deverav. He went and he said it was because of the erev, of the erez, which was in the Bet HaMikdash, and it came out from him, the parasha, it says over here, hafrasha. It came out from him some type of like secretion, which the color is like anaf yarok. It's like very green, right? Sheletz tamar, okay, of a date tree. So Amar Ravacha bar Yaakov, it says Ravacha bar Yaakov, shitin saveh avina. We were 60 rabbis. The kulu yakur mipeked Rav Huna levar me'ana. Everybody became sterile except for Anna, right? The kaim v'nafsheh to say chokhmah techayeh ba'aleha, that the chokhmah is going to be mechayeh. Here it says Ravacha bar Yaakov mitachis v'zeh maaseh she'asahu atzmo. He was in the story and he was almost in a sakana, but he was pikach to realize it. So he went and he said, right? That means basically he went and he actually used to take it out in a certain place. So there's a whole story over here about exactly what happened, but he was able to save himself. So that's why he says, but look how many rabbis at the end became all sterile from the same shiur. The Gemara, Girsha Muteret. So it says over here like this: if right now he divorces her, so now she's allowed to get married to another person. Okay? Says the Gemara, Sheni'im Shlishilo. She could only get married to one more man, but she can't get married to two more men, meaning like after the third time. Why? Exactly. Why? Because if not, then we're going to say that already she's got a chazakah that she cannot have children. So matniti mani. So who's our Mishnah? Rabbi, it's Rabbi. The Tanya, as we learned, you remember there's a machloket between Rabbi and Rashbad with chazakah with 2 times or 3 times. So here it says the Tanya was learned to write a mala rishon umet. Imagine right now you did a brit milah to the first boy, and then he dies. Sheni, the met. Shlishi lotamun. So according to Rabbi, the third one, don't do a brit milah already. Why? But since the first 2 already died, so that's it. You don't do a brit milah to the third child, because that means there's something with the children of this family that they will die from brit milah. Rashbag Omer Rabbi Shimon says, Hashlishi lo tamul. The third one, right? Sorry, the shlishi tamul. You do have to do the brit milah to the third one. The revi'it you don't do it. Why? Because chazakah in 3 times. So the machlok between Rabbi and Rashbag is chazakah in 2 times or chazakah in 3 times. Ask the Gemara. I thought we learned the opposite. So it says the Gemara, it says which of the 2 braitas were taught, right, the other way around. What does that mean? Right? Which one is the ikar? So he comes and he says, because there was written as if to say that the chazakah was going to be in 2 or 3 times. So therefore we learned another braita which is the exact opposite. Okay? The braita is going to be to do with somebody that the what's it called? Okay, this is again the same concept. So he comes and he says this. He says, Tashema, Ta'amar Rav Chia Barabba, Rav Yochanan says, Rav Chia Barabba, Rav Yochanan, Maaseh be'arba'a chayot betzipori shema ladishona umet, shniya umet, shlishi umet, Ravit ba lifnei Rashbag, amar la al tamuli. Right? What it says. It says over here that there was a story with Rav Chia Barabba, the name of Yochanan. It was a story with 4 sisters, right, in Tzipori. One of them, she did a brit milah. Why does it have to be 4 sisters? I'm not sure. Let's see if it explains. But it says that one sister comes, she does a brit milah to her son, he dies. Right? Now this is the second sister. So it's like 4 different sisters coming from the same family. But they're 4 different sisters. So one sister does a brit milah, her child dies. Second sister does a brit milah, child dies. Third sister does a brit milah, child dies. Now the 4th sister comes, she has a child. She comes to Rashbag and she says, what am I supposed to do? Should I do brit milah to my child or not? Amala al tamuli, don't do it. Why? Because it could be that this is something to do with the blood system of the achayot, that maybe be'emet, it's going to come and it's going to cause this. So it says the Gemara, V'dilma yatya shlishit, nami avamala. 1 second. They only came, the story was they came on the 4th one. Maybe they would have come on the 3rd one, it would have been the same halacha. So it says the Gemara, if so, maya sadute de Rav Chia Barabba. So then what's the testimony of Rav Chia Barabba? Obviously, if Rav Chia Barabba is coming and is telling you the story, it's barur that Shitat Rashbag is that the chazakah is 3 times. It had to repeat itself 3 times. So it says the Gemara, V'dilma kamash v'lan ta'achayot mechaskot. Why don't we come and we say, no, the chidush was what I told. Why did I have to mention sisters? The chidush is that even by sisters, there's a chazakah. Meaning, I would have thought to say that when's the chazakah in the same family? The same family, 1 child, 2, 3, then yes. But here it's sisters. So maybe that's the chidush. The chidush is that even by sisters, you would make a chazakah.
Maybe
so,
says sisters before, but
Amar Rabba comes and he says, Hashta damarta achayot mechaskot. Now that you tell me that already that the sisters could come and they have a chazakah, lo yisa adam isha lo mishpacha nichbin velo mishpacha metzoreim vehu diitchazek tata zimne. He says, don't get married to a family where even in the family they have problems of nichbin. Nichbin is like epilepsy. What's the word? Epilepsy. Not that they fall down. Not that they just epilepsy. Right? Machalata nefila it says here in Hebrew. Right? Or mishpacha metzoreim. Or that they have mitzorat, which is basically some type of a vehudit chazat zimne, as long as it has 3 people. What does that mean? Many times you have to realize, right? The concept is that many times over here, right, it could pass on in the family. So if you're going to get married into family, and all of a sudden you see 1 second, there might be a problem. So you have to find out. You understand? You have to realize. Okay. So my havala. So what exactly is then the shita now to do with Rashbag? what is the maskana? So Kiata Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef Amar. So when Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef came and he said, Uvda v'kamed Rabbi Yochanan beknishta de Maon. So there was a story of Rabbi Yochanan in the Bet Knesset of Maon. Yom Kippur Shechol B'Shvat, that it came out on Kippur on Shabbat. There were 3 boys, right? The first one, Mala Rishona v'met, he died. Second one, died, met, right? Shlishit, Ba lefanav amar la lechiu muli. So on the third one, he came and he said, go do the Brit Milah, right? There's no chazakah. So you see from here that Rashbag was saying that even on the third child, do the Brit Milah. Meaning you're not going to have a chazakah on the third one. So do the Brit Milah. So Elmaleh Abaye comes and he says, Chazi de kashari tisura v'sakanta. Says what? You saw, means you're looking with your edut, that you're permitting to be over in Isur Doraita and to put the tinok in a sakana, which means you have to be very careful with your testimony. So Samach Ale Abaye was Samach Ale Duto, the Azal v'Nasba lechuma. And he went and he actually got married, right? At Chuma Barta, the Isi B'red Ravitza B'red Rav Yehuda, the daughter of Isi, the son of Isi Ben Rav Yehuda, the Nasba Rachva B'Pumbadita, that she was married before to Rachva and Pumbadita, Ushchiv, and he died. Rav Yitzchak B'red Rabba Baruchana Ushchiv, and then he died. The Nasba Hu, and then he got married to her, right? Ushchiv, and he died. So therefore, basically what happened, basically this is the Isha Katlanit, 3 times, right? What does that mean? It's called the Black Widow. What's the Black Widow? She got married once, boom, the husband dies. Second time, the Black Widow. Yeah, that's what it is. So Amar Rava comes and he says, Umika de Avi Duda ben Afshek Yai. Huh? Oh yeah? He comes and he says what? Does there even exist such a case that he's doing it in himself? He put himself in sakana. He said, Avin de Samcha, that which Avin said in the name of Yochanan, you should be somech on that. Yitzchak sumak alav basamcha, but he says, but Yitzchak ha'adom, right, of Yitzchak but Yosef, you should not be somech alav. Why? Shumavin yeshno b'chazara, because he was always osek b'chazara on the studies of Rabbi Yochanan. Yitzchak sumkano b'chazara, but he didn't do chazara. Are you listening? Kinya Masechta. Yeah? Basically he's saying, you could be somech alav, velo alav. Why are you going to be somech alav? You could be somech not on Yitzchak samcha, but you could be somech on Rav Avin. Why? Because Avin always used to do chazarot on the shiurim. He used to do chazarot, and therefore, if he remembers it, meaning that the fact that he'll remember it, and he's able to give it over. It says Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef. So he says Yitzchak Samcha. He says no, he can't. And not only that, Eimar de plige linyan milah benesuin mi plige. Maybe by Brit Milah there's a machlok between them. By Nisuin, whoever said there's a machlok between them. Yeah? So says the Gemara, it is. Tanya, we learned in a Braita the same machloket. Niset la rishon v'met la sheni v'met la shashi lo tinaseh. Divrei Rabbi, Rashbag omer la shashi tinaseh la Rabbi lo tinaseh. The exact same machloket that you have by Brit Milah is the exact same machloket that you have by marriage. That means just like by Brit Milah, there was a machloket, is it 2 or 3? Meaning 2 children died, the third one, do you do Brit Milah or no? According to Rabbi, no. According to Rashbag, yes, and it's only the 4th one that you don't do it. So to the exact same machloket, to the marriage. Do you get married to the 3rd one or not? Or only to the 4th one? No. I understand by Brit Milah, Ika mishpacha de Rafi Dama. There's a mishpacha that their blood is very, very dalil. It's not congealed. It's very runny, right? It's very liquidy, right? And therefore, what happens is, right? Vika mishpacha de kamidam. And there's other families that is very congealed. So what happens is, if somebody's going to do Brit Milah to the children, so he says it could be that it's going to be a problem, right? So therefore, you could have some children from the family, right, that they're dying because of Brit Milah, and you could say that it's a chisoron in the blood, meaning there's something in the blood that's some of them, the blood is naturally thin, right? That that you look at, so it's a problem. What? Ela nisuin my time about what's reasoning of nisuin, meaning I understand by Brit Milah because sometimes you could have. The blood is one way, and sometimes even in the child. Sometimes you could have one child that it's one way, one child. But here, by marriage, what's the reason? So, Mayan gorem, right? Ravashi Amar Mazal gorem. There's a machloket. Is it the Mayan, which means that it's because they're dying because of having relations with her, or is it because of the Mazal, which is causing her to die? Mazal is like the Mazal of the Adam. So it has nothing to do with in a sense. So it comes over here, Al Goral HaChaim, right? So he says it's not talui b'ma'asav u'zkuto. So he comes and he says, So he comes and he says like this. So it could be that it's mazala that's causing that the husband has to die each time. Okay, so he comes and he now says like this. He says it could be that it's the mazal which is causing. Okay, it could be that that he has to divorce her and then maybe that's why she's not going to become rich. Other people say, okay, there's a whole questions here. So now he comes and he says this. Now what's the difference between them? What happens if it was only that she got engaged? Remember the engagement of the Torah, and then he died. Do you consider that strike one or not? If you say it's because of the mayan, the tashrish, he wasn't supposed to have relations with her yet, so you can't say it's relations. But if you're going to tell me it's because of the mazal, it went to her mazal. So that's going to be the difference between them. Inami, another difference between them. Tenafal midik lavenit. What happens if he fell off a tree and he died? Right? Now, here, you cannot say it was because of mayana. He fell off because he fell off a tree. It wasn't just naturally, the guy just, dropped dead. You understand? So if it was just, boom, he just like died, so you could say, listen, maybe it's that's the difference. That's what he's saying. If he fell off the tree, it could be that maybe Be'emet, you're going to say that has nothing to do with her. Okay? So that's what he says over here. He says, it's mikre mavet elu lo yechshav b'kviyut chazaka l'inyan ishto. But according to Rav Ashi, that is because of the mazal. That's her mazal also. At the end of the day, he died. So that's also her mazal. So if you tell me it's mazal, in both these cases, she's still a katlanit. If you're going to tell me it's because of the mayan, so then it has nothing to do with her. It has nothing to do with her. So Elmaleh Rav Yosef read the Rava l'Rava. Says if he says it's on Rava to Rava. Ba'mine, they asked the question from Rav Yosef, halacha kerebi, the halacha is like Rabbi. V'amarli, and he says in yes. Halacha kerashbag, v'amarli in. So now it's a stira. I'm going to ask you, what's halacha like Rabbi? Yes. What's halacha like Rashbag? Yes. But there's a stira between them. Rabbi says chazakah is in 2, and Rashbag says chazakah is in 3. So he comes and he says, v'amarli, and he tells me, in yes. Achuche achi. She says, well, he was sochek bi. What's going on here? Amar lo stamehi upashit lach. Meaning there's mishnayot stumot, right? Stamiyot, which are in every single case. So therefore, some of them are saying the halacha is like dea achat, and some of them are saying that the dea acheret. That means basically, sometimes we paskin like Rabbi, that chazakah is 2, and sometimes we paskin like Rashbag, that the halacha is 3. Okay, now Rava is going to explain. Nisuinu malkiot, to do with marriage, and to do with malkut, kerebi. That means to do with lashes, right? And to do with marriage, we paskin like Rebbe, that twice, 2 strikes, and you're out. Chazakah is in 2. To do with vestot means to do with the period. When do you say that a woman has a fixed period of how many times does she see in a row? Or shora muad, this is what John Paul mentioned before, to do with the animals. Kerashbag, we pass like Kerashbag, that the chazakah is in 3. And that's what we just said. So that's halakha l'maaseh, that's what we're actually saying. So nisuin hade'amra, nisuin was what we just mentioned. What is malkiot? What is malkiot? What is lashes? The Tanam, as we learned in the Mishnah and Sanhedrin, mishalaka v'shana, somebody that gets lashes twice because of avirot of chiyuv karet, and now he did again the sin a 3rd time around, bedin konsin oto lekipa, umachilin oto seorim, ad sheteh kreson nifkaat. If a person already got lashes twice because he was over in Isurim Doraita, that they're chayav karet. He went with a nida, with a goya. So now what happens? They come and they started giving him lashes. He did it once. He did it twice. 2 strikes and you're out, according to Rabbi. Now, if it comes the 3rd time and he did it again, you know what they do? They put him in jail and they give him to eat barley until his stomach explodes. They kill him basically, but they don't electrocute. They're the ones that pull the plug. Yeah, or they no. They come, put him in jail, and they give him to eat a certain food until he just explodes himself. Well, he dies on his own. Yeah, that's a pshat of malkiyot. That after twice, 2 strikes you're out. The stot, the tzram, as we learned in the Mishnah, en aisha kovat la veset. Samechah Mudalev 65a1. A woman does not kovat a veset to fix a veset until it's going to be 3 times. And also she has to prove it 3 times. Shoramuad also, the tzram, we learned in the Mishnah, en ashor naaseh muad that she yayidu bo shlosha pamim. The shor is not going to become muad until it's going to be yayidu ba shlosha pamim, 3 times. Okay? We continue tomorrow.